right, let me know when we're ready to start. I'm ready. I'm just waiting for her to sit down. So, do we need to? Baseball. All right. I'll just do that. Okay, you're ready? Okay. All right, we're ready to get started then. Okay. So when I see me there, that means we're started? Okay, got it. You get to look at you. Oh, this is really, really nerve-wracking. Thank you, David. All right, let's call the meeting to order. Happy Valentine's Day to everybody, and let's get through this evening and show each other a lot of love, shall we? All right, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So we don't have any members in the audience to lead us, so why don't we just stand up and do the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. I'm not sure how we proceed to roll call. Do I just announce we're done with roll call? Okay, so we have Commissioner Shapiro here and Vice Chair Joe Almasi here, so welcome. We're on item number 4, our meeting minutes, and would anyone like to make a motion as far as the minutes from January 10th, 2018?
I will second that motion.
Okay, the motion's been first and seconded, and we can vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes from January? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right. And, okay, number 5, we have administrative reports. And Parks and Maintenance Services is going to do the first report with a parks update.
So just a quick park service update. We've had a total of 37 C-Click Fix requests that have come in. 33 of those, well, we have 37 requests for service come in. 33 of those were submitted on C-Click Fix. Of those C-Click Fix reports, Promenade Park, Buena Vista Park, and Mountain Gate Park were the 3 most reported parks. Throughout that, we had numerous, 16 of them were at Promenade Community Park, so that was probably the most. Out of that, 6 of them were playground equipment, 6 of them were sports field court issues, and then 11 were related to electrical and lighting as kind of the top items that we were looking into this week, or since January 1st through February 12th. So that's current, up to date for the month. And on that, the city basketball court project is, I don't know if you've had a chance to get out to City Park, but the courts are laid and the lighting's up. There's some equipment out there as far as the shades and all of that. So it's coming along. The project is coming along very well. We are working on kind of wrapping that up. I think we're almost done. I don't have a confirmed date yet. I will have that for the next meeting. But that project in and of itself was obviously due to the ion exchange facility, the water treatment facility. We had to relocate those courts, so we moved them over there at that time, and Both of those projects, both the Ion Exchange project and the basketball court project, are wrapping up. So this will be, those are the two reports that we have for that. And then we have a couple of reports that we'll look at providing, one to follow up and answer Commissioner Wentworth's question from last meeting regarding the disease or the bug. So we do have a member from an arborist to come in and actually give a report on that. I'm not sure if that's later on, but I'd like to move that up just so the gentleman can give that report, and then he can take off if he needs to. We appreciate him being here tonight rather than other places he could be. So if we can do that.
So I'd like to introduce Mr. Tim Crothers. He's with West Coast Arborist. He's their plant health care manager. So we reached out to him to get the best information in regards to the disease on the trees. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tim.
Good evening. My name is Tim Crothers. Good evening, Commission members and city staff. Just to give you a quick little background on myself, I work for West Coast Arborist, plant healthcare manager. My background is a degree in environmental horticulture science from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. I have a degree specializing in landscape design. I hold a International Society of Arboriculture board certified master arborist, and I'm also a qualified applicator for the license for the state of California. So I've been asked to give a presentation on invasive shot-hole borer. Just a quick background on that. It's a pest that was introduced to Southern California. Researchers believe it was brought in on infected pallets on shipping containers, escaped into the environment, and now is starting to cause a problem. I'm sorry, can we go to the second page? I want to go back to the second page. All right, so this slide presents images from the Escalin lab. They are researchers with the state of California, University of California. So these give examples of the pest damage. What happens is the pest carries a disease which is sometimes lethal and harmful to trees. It's called Fusarium dieback. So the pest will fly to a tree, bore into the tree, infect the tree in the tunnels that it bores with the fungi, which once it lays its eggs, the larvae eat the fungi. So it's a symbiotic relationship. The problem is the fungi clogs the tissue in the tree, preventing the water and nutrients to get up in the canopy, and the tree subsequently has the dieback and becomes potentially a hazard. So you can see in the bottom right corner image the tunneling that it makes inside the tree and infects the disease and clogs the tissue. It is non-native. There are no beneficial insects here that prey upon this pest, so researchers are trying to identify a beneficial insect that will go after it. We just don't know if that beneficial insect that they can maybe bring over from Southeast Asia, where this is from, will not go after our insects here. So it's a big problem. So they're doing a lot of research as fast as they can on it. Can we go to the next slide? So the city staff asked me to put together this presentation, and I have a slide here that we wanted to look at the inventory that you have and see what tree species would be most likely affected. And I took basically some of the species that we know are reproductive hosts for the pest. So the pest needs to be able to get into a tree, infect the tree with the fungi, which if the fungi is established and it can continue to feed on it, that becomes a reproductive host. Not every tree is a reproductive host. So I look at your inventory, I see that there are at least 13,470 trees in basically your top 10 or 15 species that are reproductive hosts. So that makes up about 22% of the total city tree sites that we have in the inventory. The biggest one would be Chinese flame tree, and that's about 3,446 trees that are over 30 feet tall. And I list kind of this by species and by size category there to give you an idea of what size quantity of trees that we're looking at, and also the actual size of the trees, because if the trees do become diseased and declining and you have dead branches in the trees, you don't want them falling onto the public. So that's a good indicator of what size trees and quantities there you have. So a total of 4,041 mature trees over 30 feet tall, which is a good size mature tree, and represents about 7% of the city trees. And if you can go to the next slide. So the best management practices that the researchers are recommending, and we as well, is that you really try to prevent the problem from establishing in the first place. And you do that by developing and using site-specific guidelines and thresholds. You want to monitor on a regular basis to gather information, see what is actually going on in your urban forests, city trees that are maintained. You want to diagnose and cause the pest and try to see if there's natural enemies. This goes for any disease or pest problem that you might have. And then manage the pests using a combination of appropriate methods. Next slide. So at this point, if there's any questions, I can answer specifically about the pest.
First, I want to thank you for bringing the information to the Parks Commission and making a great presentation. That's what we were looking for.
Great.
And Ed and Tom also for following up with the information at my request. When they gave their trees report, I had mentioned that what I had seen around town, and I'm a frequenter of the parks, and in fact, I had been to City Park. I've seen the progress on the basketball courts and so forth, that I knew the difference between the wintering trees and the diseased trees. And I had seen several trees where the branches are dying off, and it looks odd. You know, it doesn't look right, and you can kind of tell. So I appreciate that, because it kind of helps inform the public too that the trees aren't as healthy as we'd like them to be, and there's other factors influencing that. My question isn't so much about the beetle, but I know that in a couple of places we have recently put some citrus trees. And I know that there is also a disease going through the citrus trees. So can you talk a little bit about that and what it takes to, for the city from that perspective, what it would take to maintain those trees and be aware of what's going on?
Are those citrus trees in city right-of-way or public parks? Or?
They put
Okay.
them right off California, and there's one off, in a little section off Main Street also where they recently put some citrus trees, a couple of pocket areas.
Okay.
Yeah.
There is a quarantined pest that is affecting citrus. It's called the Asian citrus psyllid, and it does vector a disease which is lethal to citrus trees. I am not aware if it's actually in the city of Corona. I would have to double check on that.
Yeah, I was at the farmer's market, and the lady gave me a bunch of pamphlets because I have a couple of citrus trees, and so
Yes.
I wasn't sure what to do. I just,
It's
read through
important not to move trees.
Mm-hmm.
Once you have an established quarantine area, they notify the public, and you keep any fruit and you keep the trees within that area
okay, yeah.
and not move it.
That makes sense. She said I would have to take out the trees. So I was just wondering, in our process of watching these trees with the beetle, if what needed to be done for those trees, because they're immature, I believe, at this point. They're new. So
Okay.
anybody else have questions?
Yeah, Tim, thanks. Pardon my voice. Thanks for this report. This is a kind of an interesting report. All of these 13,000 trees are on city property in some manner?
Yes.
And this is an invasive beetle, am I right?
Yes.
So even if we somehow got a control of this, how would we stop it going off to private property or out into the Cleveland National Forest and bouncing back in once we start to control it?
Yeah, that is the key thing to consider, isn't it? So there's being proactive involves monitoring, which we mentioned, So having an active program of looking at the trees on a regular basis, inspecting them, seeing if you see the symptoms of trees being attacked. If you see that happening, take a sample, send it to the university laboratories. They can tell you exactly if that is actually the invasive shot hole borer pest. And they can also test the diseased tissue to see if it's the fusarium that it is infecting with the trees. With that confirmation, then you can go ahead and make a plan. Okay, this is where we have it, and this is what we need to do. There's treatments that you can perform on trees that don't have it yet, such as soil injection of imidacloprid. It's a systemic, which the tree takes up through its roots and into the tree as an insecticide. You can also spray the trunk, so if the beetle lands on the trunk, it comes in contact with the pesticide. You can also, if the tree is already infected with the insect, you can do a two-part treatment on that as well. It's a trunk injection. So you inject the tree with the insecticide and a fungicide. So you're going after both problems, the insect and the fungus too. But we try to discourage trunk injections because that is an injury to the tree. So we only really want to do that if the beetle is already in the tree itself.
Does the tree, at the location of where the infection happens, when they bore in, does the tree below continue to live?
It will, yes. So you may
just-
see some dieback from the top, and it might regrow from the bottom.
What if we found trees that were certain heights that had been infected and we cut that off?
You wouldn't be treating the pest at that point. You'd only be taking off any hazardous branches, but the pest would still be in the trunk of the tree,
Even if
born inside.
Even if we're below where they entered?
Yes. Basically, depending on the species, the tree it is, some of the insects will go after the branches on some species of tree, and other times it'll go after the trunk of the tree. So it's hard to manage it by pruning. It's more of biochemicals at this point.
Thanks.
Sure.
Very informative.
Okay, Mr. Crothers, out of these 13,470 trees, 22% of the total city trees that are reproductive hosts, and 7% of the trees are 4,000 mature trees, we're saying these are potential hosts for an invasion, but they're not currently necessarily infected.
Yeah, I don't have any data on actually if they have the pest in them or not at this point. That's just what you have in your inventory, and they are known reproductive hosts that are listed on websites.
Got it. Could you give us a ballpark of, are we in infancy of this insect taking hold in the city? And that's where we are. We now are at a place where we have to take action.
Yes, I'm not aware of any at this point in the city itself. I know it on the other side of the hill in Orange County, in San Diego, and it's quite established in the LA basin, but over here, I'm not aware of it.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
I have an additional question, and it's probably more for Ed or Tom. You had mentioned that there's some preventative measures. You could spray the trunk, you could inject the tree. Couple of questions on that. Do our land maintenance district fees pay for trees in those areas? Are we doing prevention? Are we doing injections on diseased trees? How would that get paid for? And how is the city going to meet the demand for testing for the sick trees?
So all of those things are incorporated or will be incorporated in budgets to the degree that we have funding available. So if these are things that are in specific LMDs or CFDs that we have that have funding and that are eligible for that, we're always looking at those costs. And these are the things that will be incorporated in our ongoing operations and maintenance budgets. To the extent, though, that that timing is everything. So in the last meeting, you had brought up this, that you had noticed. At the same time, Ed had been working on coming up with this information. So we were identifying it, looking at it, and we're getting that ready for our budget. So as we move into the budget season right now, these are some of the things that we are budgeting for, and we're trying to utilize that any reserve funding or what's necessary so that we can get a handle on this. This report for us, I know this is a smaller report here for you. The original report that Ed received was about 35 slides. So there's a lot more detail that we're trying to look at and get a better handle on where we can go and how much that's going to actually cost the city so that we're aware of all of that. Timing-wise, as things were moving on, these are the things that we're paying attention to. Also, you brought up, Commissioner, that this could leave city property and maybe go out to the Cleveland National Forest. On the other hand, we believe, this probably came from the Cleveland National Forest and is attacking us. So, the chicken or the egg syndrome, which one came first? We're looking for that and trying to handle this in the best method possible, whether that's saving the trees that are savable, working with the trees that are not savable to get them out and get something else in its place that's not going to be attacked or could follow suit to this. Those are the things that we're always assessing from both a budgetary standpoint and a maintenance standpoint.
Tom, could we also, I guess this might be a little bit more than we had anticipated, but is there any way we could prioritize the location of the trees which ones, if they become attacked, which will create the greatest liability to us?
And I think that's some of what you're seeing here. So when we were talking about tree heights of 30 feet and 45 feet and different varying heights of trees, the 4,041 trees that are kind of identified here are some of the higher priority trees. Again, if this is damaging the canopy and the canopy begins to die off, the larger the tree, the larger the branches and the more damage that can be caused through that. So identifying those trees, managing those trees, those 4,041 trees on here would be our priority.
Okay, thank you, Tim. That was,
You're very welcome.
appreciate that. Thanks
All
for
right.
coming down and doing that on
All right.
Valentine's. Happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you, you as well.
Thanks. Have we covered everything on the Parks and Maintenance Services report?
We are going to have just a quick presentation by Ed regarding Arbor Day. So we just want to get some guidance from the commission so that we can look into moving forward on a topic.
Okay, thank you.
So if we could put the slide up, please, that'd be great. So we wanted to reach out to you today. Arbor Day is approaching, and we wanted to get the commissioners' thoughts and feel for the type of celebration that we would be putting on. We had a resident reach out to us who we thought had a wonderful idea. He came to us in regards to, he knows somebody that has some historical citrus trees over 100 years old and thought it would be a great idea to incorporate a planting off one of those trees for the Arbor Day celebration. We identified Joy Park as a potential site. And before you, we wanted to talk about things. Arbor Day in California is typically celebrated in March, but Arbor Day throughout the nation is all the way through April. So we wanted to reach out to the commission to find out what your preference would be, what your thoughts were on it. Would you want it in March? Do you want it in April? Also, we reached out to a few Eagle Scouts. They're interested in helping us with the planting and the event and putting up a barrier around the tree and a plaque and really making it very nice. So with that being said, we're looking at a no-cost event. It appears that we can get this done and have a great celebration with no cost to the city. So we just wanted to reach out to you to find out your thoughts, your feel for it. On the last slide, you'll see that if there's an event schedule, that's typically the way the event has gone in the past. But again, if you guys would like to change that up, we're open to suggestions and ideas as well.
So I guess the item before you guys tonight is really, are we looking at something where you would want to do it perhaps next month in March and stay with California? Or is it something that you would be okay, a little bit of extra time and do a day in April or end of April or end of March, beginning of April timeframe? In the fact that we are looking at doing some tree planting, we don't want to get too far beyond April, just so that there's time for establishment in the spring. So that's kind of the timeframes that we're looking at for you, if that's what the commission would like to do.
Well, personally, I would be in favor of going a little bit later in March or in April. I know April typically, we get a celebration, I think, for Earth Day. And I know there's, well, I know the annual, Day of the Child is, I think, in one of those 2 months. March 10th happens to be the annual Run for Kids 25th year. So while we haven't in the past seen a big turnout of children, it'd be great to at least invite them to be able to attend the event. So I'd be in favor of pushing it back. I like the event schedule and be very, very flexible and encourage us to participate. Big fan of Arbor Day.
We planted last year here on the site at Arbor Day, did we not? What date was that? March, right? Yeah, it was similar to the March 10th that you're proposing now.
I believe it was more towards the end of March, if I recall correctly, but yes, in March.
And I do just want to say, March 10th was the date that we had originally talked about and tossed out. We had pulled that off the presentation and just put some dates in March or April. So please don't be focused on March 10th if that doesn't work. We're just basically looking for a Saturday, March and April to schedule an event that works for everybody.
Sal brought up the point that there's a run that's going to be done at that time. If that's going to detract from.
Okay, I think that this is an event that we could partner the commission with the Corona Parks Foundation. So with that, we might get better attendance. We could maybe, as a foundation, we could kick around some ideas about, potluck lunch or something that would draw people, plus publicize it a little bit. I think that pushing it to either March 24th or April 7th, those are Saturdays, might be a good option. So the last weekend in March, the 31st, the next day is Easter, I believe. So that weekend should be off the table. So I would be more in favor of pushing it to the end of the month, or the very beginning of April, just to give more time for planning and that kind of thing. What do you think about April 7th?
I do believe April 7th is the Garden Festival, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. And what about the 24th? Are there any conflicts that anybody knows on the schedule for the 24th of March? Well, that's perfect. Household hazardous waste pickup, drop off your hazardous waste, come plant a tree. So I don't think that would be too much of a conflict. Do you think? I don't think with the staff.
I'm aware of 2 events on that day. I don't think either one will conflict. I know there's a Easter egg thing going on at Ridgeline Park, or proposed, and the symphony has something in the evening. During the day, I don't think it'll be a problem. So, and April 7th is fine. Where's the garden festival?
Garden Festival will be here. So, and I think either day is okay. I know the Garden Festival, it might be a great way to start that off, do the planting first thing in the morning and advertise both. We can work that out if those are the dates that we want to look at. What we'll do is we'll take the information, we'll reach out to the Corona Parks Foundation as well and make sure everybody's on. We'll put a little bit more of a game plan together, and then we'll come back kind of with those 2 dates in mind and start working on penciling them in. That'll give us enough time to do planning.
Okay. The Corona Parks Foundation is meeting tomorrow, so that would be something we can talk about, and then maybe we can firm up which dates work best. So, but I'd like to see the 2 groups, the commission and the Parks Foundation, partner and start bringing more community in by just involving more people. So I think that would be good.
What kind of attendance would we be looking at?
We're hoping to get as many people as we can to come out and celebrate Arbor Day.
Because that's a small little park off of Grand and Joy.
It is.
We're
It
talking
is.
parking might be a problem.
We will, again, reach out and we'll take a peek and see what the impacts would be. But I think there's enough parking around in the surrounding area there to support it.
Okay.
And one of the things we're trying to do is celebrate some of our little neighborhood pocket parks. Corona is known for, El Cerrito Park, Santana Park, Mountain Gate Park. We have some great sports parks and a lot of people there. We do want to let people know, and we don't want to forget about our little neighborhood, corner parks and celebrate some of that. And the opportunity to cherish our past and look at that with some of the lemon trees and things like that, that's going to be important. So I think it'll work good.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So that's going to conclude the Parks and Maintenance Services report? All right. Okay, moving on. Library and Recreation Services updates. That would be David.
Okay. The first item that we're going to talk about this evening, you have two documents in front of you, one legal size and one standard letter size. Let's look at the letter size doc first. So what we're going to talk about this evening is the document that's in front of you was actually shared with departments 2 weeks ago tomorrow out of the Finance Department, and it was shared at last Wednesday's council meeting. It basically was designed to give a picture of where the city is currently economically. And so there continues to be a structural budget deficit. And so this year, departments have been tasked with helping the city save just slightly over $10 million, which means that each department has to reduce their operational budgets by 7%. So if you look, you've got the far right column, which talks about the remaining balance, and then you see the horizontal red box, which is Library and Recreation Services. So you see, just going across their salaries and benefits, services and supplies, which gives us a total budget of $5.4 million, which is a 4.5% total of the city's general fund budget. So for us, 7% represented $454,000. Because of benefit cuts as a result of late last year's imposition through negotiations with city employee groups, $237,000 approximately was recovered through those benefit savings. So that leaves us a balance of $217,158 that we have to reduce the budgets by. So with that in mind, let's take a look at the legal size sheet. And you can see the department has been working for the last week and a half at how we arrive at the $217,158 figure. So at the bottom of the first series of numbers, 1 to 21 there, you'll see the target, $217,158, and just above that, how we managed to reach that. So let's go up top and we'll take a look at each of the proposed decreases. And at this point, it's services. There's not a whole lot of wiggle room for us in terms of supplies. You've probably heard Carrie indicate numerous times that on average, 70 cents of every dollar that the city spends is spent on salaries and benefits. In our department, that figure is actually 81 cents of every dollar. And in fact, as we move forward with these cuts, it's going to push closer to the realm of 85 cents of every dollar is salary and benefits. So just kind of running down the list of things, we've got proposed decreases and then some alternatives so that, again, part of what we want tonight is to get some feedback to the commission about what's being proposed. But to let you know, there just isn't a lot of time. We actually are required to submit forms related to salaries and benefits tomorrow, today. Those went in today. So the budget process is already underway. So let's just kind of walk down things. So on what's been proposed, the first is reducing $5,000 from the holiday lighting budget, and that simply is we'll delay refurbishment of some of the decorations. The second item, summer concerts. What our proposal is to do is to go to the Parks Foundation, and I've actually given David a heads up today to say we can't afford to do this thing, so if the city's to continue hosting summer concerts, we really need for the foundation to pick that up as its signature event and pay for all costs associated, which amount to $13,000. Item number 4 is a reduction in operational hours at the library. It's a total of 7 hours a week, which amounts to 1 hour Monday through Wednesday. So rather than closing, as we do currently at 9 o'clock, we would close instead at 8 o'clock. Thursday and Friday, rather than opening at 10 a.m., we would push opening to noon. And so Thursday and Friday would match Saturday's current hours, which are noon to 5. One of the concerns is that you run the risk of losing some revenue. And part of the reason we're proposing those hours is because we recognize that those are less attended timeframes. Last hour of the day, not a big deal. Even the early morning, the times that are the biggest issue for us are those mornings that actually have story time. So for us, Thursday's going to be an issue, but patrons generally will follow wherever we move that. So we're looking at different day, we're looking at different times to figure out how that works so that we don't lose the patronage there. But one of the ways that we're going to ensure not to lose passport revenue is that while we reduce the hours at the library, we'll do the same thing at the Circle City Center, but we'll reduce it an hour a day, but we'll shift the hours of operation to later in the day. So currently we operate from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. The proposal is to open it from this point forward, well, in the new fiscal year, from 11 a.m., but go till 9 p.m. So it's a decrease in 1 operational hour per day, but we shift the hours to later in the evening. So again, we capture those folks who may still be interested in passport operations. We're going to have a secondary location at the Circle City Center. So they'll still be able to do that. They'll still be able to sign up for programs. And with the Circle City Center being open later, we can accommodate more activities. In addition, item number 5, a reduction in operational hours at the Senior Center. It's a total of 12 hours a week, which amounts to closing on Saturdays. And then currently we are open Monday through Thursday until 8 o'clock. We would reduce that back to 5 p.m. And again, the idea is rather than eliminate the programs, the goal would be to shift the programming over to the Circle City Center, which is a little more than a mile distant from the Senior Center now. And it's a different clientele in the evening than it is during the day. It's a younger group. They're much more mobile, so that we think we can do that successfully. And again, that's part of the reason that we would propose that reduction in operational timeframes. Items 6 and 8 really are some adjustments in supply costs that correspond with reduction in operational hours. Item number 9, the school calendar, as you're aware, keeps shifting. In the coming year, there are going to be 37 operational weeks for Kids Club. So that's precisely what's reflected here, whereas it has in the past gone as many as 39 weeks. So we'll be solidly at 37 weeks, so that represents a cost savings. In addition, some of you may be aware that the Assistant Recreation Coordinator who was over the program has recently left the city. We're going to rehire that position, but there are going to be 2 changes to that. One, we're going to reduce the number of hours that that person will work, putting them under the Affordable Care Act threshold, which saves $7,000 for that position. The other is that because it's a new body, they'll start at a lower step in the salary range, and so that represents a significant cost savings. And so again, with some adjustments in programmatic hours, item 10, there would be a small adjustment in program supplies. Item number 11, again, part of what we're having to do is figure out how we use the resources that we have available. So this proposal is to take the seasonal pool aquatics manager position and one of our recreational specialists, put those positions together and create an additional assistant recreation coordinator whose responsibilities will be sports for 3 seasons out of the year, and then aquatics year-round, which mostly occurs at summer. So it allows us to have a year-round person sitting over the top of all of those programs, so lends itself to consistency and still manages to save slightly more than $2,000. Item number 12, and this is a change that has already occurred. Some of you may remember Allison Burnson, who was in our department. She was sort of the number 2 person helping out with our instructional classes. She recently has gone to the city clerk's office. She was a recreation leader 3. We're backfilling that position with a 2, and again, it results in a couple $1,000s annually in the savings. Item 13 is just a reduction in uniform expenses in aquatics. The easiest way to do that is find a less expensive vendor and then just streamline how many swimsuits and T-shirts we buy. But again, it doesn't represent a ton of money, but we're at a point in which there's not a lot of money around there to play. We operate pretty skeletally. Then item number 14 is the elimination of special duty pay in facilities. As you know, we recently had a change in the supervisor who oversees the facilities. We've shifted some of the hours of staff around so that we have extended coverage over the course of the week and over the course of the day. So it should eliminate the need for folks to have to call that supervisor after hours, and so special duty pay will be eliminated as a result. Item number 15, Orange Boy is a service that we have been using, and it basically compiles data on library patrons. It bundles them up into particular categories, the types of materials, et cetera, that they're interested in using, and it's allowed us to sort of streamline communication with those folks. It's been a nice tool to have, but at the end of the day, if something's got to go on the block, that's easier to let go of than it is to let go of personnel or to reduce other services. So that saves just under $12,000. 16 saves $5,000. You probably are aware, as you enter and exit the library, you've got the counters there. Well, not only does it count people coming in and out, but there are RFID tags on every material that can be checked out, audiovisual, books, et cetera. And so it reads them when they come in and go out. Well, we have an agreement already with vendors, whereas we purchase items, they'll provide the RFID tags. So this was sort of a separate line item. So we're just going to turn that service over to the vendors, and so we'll eliminate that as a separate purchase of RFID tags. So moving forward, any materials purchased will have the RFID tag supplied. Item 17. Excuse me, as you know, we've spent the last couple of years extensively doing outreach to parks and other areas in the community with our library and recreation on the go vehicle. We're going to reduce the amount of supplies available for their use, and we'll attempt to make up for much of that simply by seeking additional sponsorships and hope that folks in the community will be willing to invest in that to a greater degree. That represents a savings of slightly more than $10,000. Item number 18, the city is provided DIF funds, development impact fees, annually based on the amount of development occurring in the community. As you know, that represents an expansion of services. You can't use it for things like maintenance, but one of the things that we can use it for is to pay a variety of the electronic resources that we have, databases, et cetera, that we use at the library. So we're going to shift DIF funds to that particular line item and thereby decrease the general fund expenditure. At this point, the proposal is to do that to the tune of just over $22,000. Item number 19, I think you're all aware by now, if you're not, Lana is going to be leaving us in the next week. She is off to Elk Grove, California, where she will be a manager there and doing for them slightly more than she's been doing for us. One of the benefits to that is that she'll be back on the city manager's track, which is her ultimate professional goal. So while we are sad to see her go, and I tell her that every day, she's leaving anyway. But her departure means that her replacement will be hired in at a lesser step. Again, because Lana's been with the city for 13 years, so somebody coming in new That will actually result in a savings of about $20,000 in salaries and benefits. Item number 20, a similar situation. Betty Lusher, who is a library supervisor, is going to be retiring as of next month. Abby and Chris and some of the others at the library in evaluating what makes the most sense organizationally, we're going to transition away from a second library supervisor and instead create a Library 3 position, which can help out on the supervision level, but not to the same degree. And in doing that, making that adjustment will result in a savings of a little more than $14,000. Finally, and this was something that was done a couple of years ago, then it was brought back, and that is a proposal to reduce the number of recreation brochures that we provide to the community. As you know, we reached out to the community late last year and asked their feelings about going digital, not going digital, and there was a 6% difference in those who wanted to keep it, those who wanted to go. And so at this point, again, because we're down to simply looking at every means to reduce the figure to get to $17,000 in reductions, the proposal is to decrease from 4 issues back down to 3. And that represents a savings of $25,000. And then, as I said, in the column next to that, you can see there are 4 items that are alternate proposals, should we want to move in that direction. And those represent a savings of up to $123,000 because we recognize these are going to be tough calls, but there aren't a whole lot of places to go. Then the lower portion, there are a couple of service level changes or expansions where we believe we can expand. We have been talking to several schools in the district about expanding the Kids Club operations. Temescal Valley is interested in doing that. Lincoln Alternative is interested in doing that. We are hopeful that both of those schools will be done with any construction activities so that we can move forward at the beginning of the next school calendar year. It appears Temescal Valley is in position and we should be able to move forward with that. Lincoln is a little more questionable. But doing that, adding those 2 sites would cost about $60,000, but would result in more than $93,000 in revenue. As I referenced earlier, with some reduction in operational hours at the library, passports are a revenue generator for us. So as not to impact that, we would expand those services to the Circle City Center to the tune of about 30 hours a week. And Chris Smith, who oversees the passports, is fairly confident that we would run those at capacity. So for an investment of about $31,500, we can actually generate almost $250,000 in revenue in passports if the economy doesn't tilt in the wrong direction. So the proposed reductions there, as I said, amount to the target amount of $217,158, and at the same time, we'll be looking to increase revenues. But we wanted to get some feedback from the commission as to the direction, at least at this point, that we are proposing.
Okay, I'll start. I have, thank you for the thorough explanation. Much appreciated. I have a question about the alternate reductions. I have several questions. We'll just kind of hit them briefly. Is item 1, the elimination of the event, the $59,000, would this be an alternative or an add-on to the $217,000 savings?
It can go. It would be an alternative. Again, our target is $217,000. So if some of the items that are in the proposed decreases, just are something that you guys would be opposed to, then we would consider any one of these alternatives in lieu of that. We would just, again, ask you that you be mindful of what politically will in fact move forward.
Sure.
So that proposal eliminate, the first 3 items would eliminate, our 3 major community events.
Yeah, which are very popular
Yep.
in the community. Okay, and then sorry to hear you leaving. Lana, I did not know that. And then
We're crying every
some
day.
comments on that.
It's not changing our mind.
Okay. just, throw something out there that we had years ago and haven't really talked to our city manager about it, but what happens if we eliminate Fridays like we had years ago? What does that do to our,
Council has already rejected that proposal for two reasons. One, they don't think it's community or business friendly. And secondly, an assessment of when that occurred previously, it didn't amount to any significant savings. Because some operations absolutely have to continue. So code enforcement would continue, obviously maintenance services would continue, which means buildings are still operational.
okay, well, my initial assessment is it looks like you've done a thorough job in presenting us a complete list. And as painful as a few of these items are, it doesn't look like overall the public would see a lot of reduction in service. Obviously, some will be more obvious, like the senior center and the library. The other items seem pretty manageable from my perspective. I'll see what the rest of the commission has to say.
First of all, Lana, congratulations on your position. It is our loss. We're sorry to see you go. And we'll get David some crying towels. Don't worry about it.
You should have got them 2 weeks ago.
David, I appreciate what you've done here. This is very, very meticulous in what you've done. I have a question though. On the bottom, excuse me again, those revenue generating, you're looking at $341,000 to be generated. Where's that money going to go if that would come out? Would that go to restore these reductions? Would that go into general fund?
It would all, excuse me, it would all ultimately go to general fund. Again, the difficulty with revenues is it's purely projections.
Right.
At this point, Temescal Valley, for example, with Kids Club, seems like a sure things in terms of us moving forward, but we have no idea at the end of the day, until the first day of school, more importantly, the second and third weeks of school, how many people are actually going to be participating. So total speculation as to what will generate in terms of revenues. Lincoln Alternative, on the other hand, at this point, it's probably a 50-50. Just no idea when they're going to complete construction over there. We continue the dialogue with the principal. He just doesn't have any idea. So again, those are really speculative numbers. But what they do for us is it moves us in the direction of future growth. So that if these things in fact happen, then it is possible that we can go back and say, okay, we've managed to recoup some of these the revenues. Can we then, put back some of the things that we had earlier cut? Because at this point, what we know is that there's a structural imbalance that we've got to reduce the budget. What we hope is that while we're making some cuts, that we can also generate some additional revenue, but we won't know that until the revenue starts coming in.
Well, the reason I brought that up is that you had a $2,800 reduction in Kids Club supplies. You're going to try to increase it by 2 schools. The last thing you want to do is cut supplies. Because if you really want those to take off and be successful, you're going to have to give some seed money to make sure they go.
Yeah.
So cutting them and putting a reduction in the budget of 7%, I guess that's what that was, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to see the money that you're going to be stressing out on to make the Kids Club successful and then growing, and then have that money that's growing go back into general fund and it doesn't recoup, and then those 2 programs fail because of lack of funding, adequate funding.
Yeah, they're actually sort of separate, Joe. So the 28 comes out of what has historically been budgeted for the program. So again, we talked about we're going to reduce from 39 budgeted weeks to 37 budgeted weeks.
Right.
So that $2,800 in supplies
This time.
really is consistent with that time. So
got it.
it impacts
Okay.
the 8, not the new. What you see down below, again, that's purely a proposal.
Speculative,
We
right.
still have to go and sell that idea to finance and to Darrell, et cetera, to see if they're even willing, because at the end of the day, we'd still have to pony up $90,000 in additional expenditures in hopes of doing that.
Right.
So we'd go in, here are our cuts, and then, on the backside of that, we're saying, but can you put 90 grand back? Because we believe that we can generate that in revenue and recoup even more than that.
Right.
So that's why that's referred to as a service level change. So that's an entirely separate budget proposal.
All right, now I understand. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation, and unlike these two, I want more. Okay. My first reaction was, great, it's a list, but it wasn't enough for me. I need more specific detail out of this. So when do you have to have this back to Daryl with our recommendations? The end of this month or next month?
Well, we will be compiling specific data, et cetera, but the reality is budget forms are going in over the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
We have our final departmental meeting on the 15th of March, in which everything is set and done, but finance will have worked through the details of that probably 2 weeks in advance. So we've got to hash out all of the details literally over the next few days and weeks. But again, staffing forms were submitted as of 5 o'clock this afternoon.
Okay, so for me, what I needed more of, this is a strict list. You went over each thing that you were going to cut out, and you talked about it, but it's not on here as specifically as you mentioned. So I guess what I'm asking for is I need that written down, because I can't remember everything you said.
Okay.
Even just looking at this list. So that would be helpful. Because I think it makes a difference, because I think there's some compromising here. I think that as a commission, if we're going to talk about budget issues like what Commissioner Almasi brought up, $2,000 is a big deal in kids' supplies and helps a program. You know, a few $1,000s to the senior center makes a big deal, a couple $1,000s. In the end, it's a little amount of money that has a high impact to the community and not overall to the city budget. And so when I look at you saying, we have the potential to make $165,000 on passports, my immediate sense of advocating back to council is, great, then let's take a few thousand of those dollars and put them in some of the most impactful places that we're cutting. And that's why I'm asking for more information and more detail, because that's what I see coming out of here. And it's very hard to digest first go around. I can't even think of good questions, although I did want to ask you, you said that for every dollar, 81 cents goes to staffing,
These salaries and budgets, correct. And that's, again, that's
And it's-
this department.
going to rise to 85 cents out of every dollar.
Based on this, it's going to be pushing in the range of 85 cents.
I don't understand that. You have less staff, but we're paying more. Like, can you, or how about I just
Actually,
don't
that's
understand
exactly
that?
correct. Pensions obviously are climbing,
Mm-hmm.
but and this is where it's most impactful for us. Literally, for the next 5 years, we are looking at $1 per hour increase for all part-time staff, and that's occurring every year for the next 4 years. So we just jumped to 11, next year it'll be 12, and all the way until we reach $15 an hour. So even while we have fewer staff, our costs continue to go up.
Right.
If you've tracked, for example, Kerry's presentations, you know over the last 10 years, and that's certainly true of this department, there have been reductions of 30% in staffing levels. It's been 30%, actually more than 30%, almost 40% in full-time staffing levels in our department. However, at the same time, the cost of doing business continues to climb. So pensions are higher. In the case of part-time staff, minimum wages continue to higher. So that literally in 5 years' time, there will be a 50% increase in base part-time salaries. For the handful of part-time staff that we have who are in PERS, their PERS costs are equal to 45% of their wages. So literally, one part-time staff, if their part-timers as a handful are, it's 150% of their salary that the person actually costs.
Okay, that's what I just wanted to make clear,
Sure.
was that what you were considering in that dollar was the pension cost plus the increase to minimum wage.
Yeah, and most of those, where salary reductions could be made, that's what's reflected in what Kerry already did. What we're doing is really more on the operational side, where
Right.
we reduce services.
Okay, and let me also just clarify the item number 1, eliminating Independence Day Festival, saving $59,423. Is that correct?
For, again, this department, because the total cost is $91,000, and it doesn't do anything for the parade because that's being underwritten by the Rotary.
Right, the parade's being underwritten. So out of this department, nearly $60,000 to your budget, and the other roughly $30,000 is coming out of general fund? Is that how we are?
Yes, but affects other departments,
but
not
affects-
us.
Okay,
Yes.
all right. So if we eliminate that out of your department, those savings, you were not advocating that. That was an either or on here is what,
It's listed as an alternative.
As an
Because
alternative.
again, it simply comes down to when you're running as lean as we are, and you're talking about significant sums of money, like, the 7% for our department represents nearly $500,000. I mean, we can nickel and dime it, as we've done in some instances, so $500 off of aquatics uniforms, $2,800 off of kids' club supplies. But if you really want to have an impact and not do 24 items, then you got to get serious.
right. So when we had this discussion earlier in the year, that was one of my comments, that I wasn't sure how we were actually affording to shoot off fireworks when we were not, our budget was not going to be met. It didn't make sense to be talking up here about money that we really can't spend. So you can take that message to council. I mean, from my perspective, I guess.
I mean, if you're free,
Because
you'll
if it-
stay on the
if it-
alternate list.
Right, if it comes down to another year with staffing being where it can be and not having fireworks, I'd rather have the staffing there and not having the fireworks. And then the following year, we're going to be looking at the same cuts. And then the following year, we're going to be back here analyzing the same kind of cuts. And I don't think that that's what people are really understanding, that this isn't the end, this is just the beginning.
Unless something dramatically changes on the revenue side, you're absolutely right.
Unless we somehow increase revenue. So I'm not going to even, that isn't the discussion for this commission, but that's, if that doesn't happen, that's where we'll be going. So, okay, so that's basically what I wanted, was you went over this very quickly, and I want to know exactly, more detailed, what hours, what are you looking at, and when you have time, that would be great to have
Okay,
that.
and I'll be happy. Are there particular items that you want me to focus on? Because if that's the case, then I will do my best to churn that information out to you as early as tomorrow. I mean, if you want it to be,
wasn't
for
any big-
example, the operational hours of the facilities, as those have been identified,
Yep,
that's.
a lot of the operational hours, yeah, because you ran through that kind of thing. And
David, one more thing. Are there, you haven't prioritized these cuts, right?
No, again, for us, it was, we had to get to our target number, and we threw everything out there.
Right.
Okay, so if you look at this, there literally is no division within the department that is not impacted.
Because what I'm saying is if we end up in a situation where, like Michelle said, we're going to be back here again doing this again next year. And we're going to lose some programs that we're never, ever going to get back again. And that's a shame.
That's a possibility, correct?
So we need to make sure that we're not going to, the effects of the cuts that we're going to have to make will be at least highlighted, so when we go to make those adjustments again, if we have to next year, so we know what kind of hurt we got, we need to make sure we verify what impact was done when we make these cuts and how they're going to be impacted again, should we have to repeat that again next year, right?
That's correct.
yeah, and then, like I said, my other thing is, if we're generating revenue, it seems a shame that, like I said, a few $1,000s that are very impactful cannot stay in your budget for the revenue that you're generating, because this is the service directly to the community. And so I don't know how I advocate for that. So I will just leave that up, to you, and then I guess come to city council and say my piece on as a public resident or what. But that would be the main piece that I see. The revenue coming in, the class is generating revenue, and yet every dollar is going back to the general fund, and we can't put another $2,000, $6,000 here and there on very impactful programming. Anything else?
Yep, I'll just add a couple of things. I'll disagree, Commissioner, on as far as the likelihood of being here next year. Obviously, we know that that 1 year's budget isn't where the issue is. But these revenue-generating items are, 2 out of the 3 seem pretty realistic based on my experience. For example, with passports, I mean, it's always full. There's always a need. And of course, if the economy changes and people stop traveling or reduce it, but that seems like a place where you'll be able to get some of this back or avoid in some way, possibly, making further cuts.
And that's why it's on this sheet, because we want folks to understand there are 2 sides of this thing, that while we're looking at reductions in services, we're also looking at opportunities for revenue generation to do a better job of balancing that. Literally, in the last 3 years, we have moved from 19% return on department expenditures, that this year we're exceeding 40, and these numbers, if they were in fact to pan out, literally begin to push us up in the high 50 range, which is terrific, and you don't find a lot of communities that are doing that. But again, at the end of the day, we can't guarantee what the economy is going to be like. So as you indicated, because if there's a downturn, folks aren't traveling. If folks aren't traveling, there's no need for a passport. And every passport, or at least 3 out of 4 passports coming in, represents $47 in revenue for us. And this is literally at capacity. This is every moment of that 30 hours is attributed to somebody filling out a passport on an average of 15 minutes per. So it literally is absolutely maximized.
As far as priorities, we didn't talk about eliminating one of the seasons when we first talked months ago about community connection, the Corona connection. So combining, one of the seasons seems like a reasonable place to cut and probably less impactful. It doesn't affect staff specifically at all, other than staff hours putting that together. As far as priorities for me, while obviously celebrating with fireworks is not as important to every single resident, I think it does represent something about what the city does for the community and would be noticed way more than some other cuts. So I personally wouldn't be looking to cut there, but there's probably expenses that could still be trimmed back even further, but it seemed like you came back already. You got like 75%.
Yeah, you've said,
first
I mean,
time.
in 3 years, we've gone from 250,000 down to 91,000. I mean, we have taken the knife to the bone.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I don't have anything else on this item, so.
Okay, so I will at least get for you tomorrow
Okay.
the details concerning activities related to reducing hours at facilities, so library, senior center, and then adjustments at the community center as well.
Let me just clarify. So let's say on the, you do make some money on the passports. I'm just a little confused. Clarify for me exactly where that money would go. Does it get to stay in your budget, or is it really going back? Would it be
Everything
towards
at
the
the end of the
general
day
fund?
goes to
Back.
general fund.
Yeah.
But then we're expended out of the general fund. That's
Right.
the way it works. However, I mean, part of what I get to do is argue, can we sort of reduce the cuts in this area because we think we're going to generate significant revenue here. So that is certainly a plausible argument, and we'll make that argument. But again, it also means that they have to be willing to commit to the $90,000 expenditure before we even move in that direction. So, and if they did, so we've just asked for $217,000, or we've identified $217,000 in cuts, and then we turn around and say, now, can you give us $90,000 of that back? So essentially, we're asking them to operate in a hole of $127,000. But we'll make the argument. Again, if we think that the data affirms that there is potential growth for passports, and we certainly think that it's there. Temescal Valley has been calling us about Kids Club. Now, it doesn't guarantee that because again, setting this up at 30 participants. It doesn't guarantee that I get 30 participants, because, again, you reduce that by 25%, and those revenues decline significantly, and all of a sudden I've lost, the gap between, revenue generation on the
Your
plus
break-even-
side.
Your
Yeah.
break-even chart changes.
Yeah.
Your break-even, yeah.
Yeah, so but we will definitely make the argument.
Okay.
I mean, that's our job.
All right, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Since you mentioned Kids Club, I do want to mention as a family user for well over a decade, yeah, I'm aware of at least one person in my sphere of influence who actually switched schools to be able to be at a school that had Kids Club because it was the only solution for their particular situation and affordable. So it is a, yeah, it is a big service that's provided. So to expand schools is great. If you can somehow survey that potential, I think that's a great service to provide. Thanks.
Okay, we can, I guess, move on to item number 2, YSAC opening day ceremony schedule. We have that. Oh, you got it? We all have it, yeah. Are you doing that, or? Oh, do I have to do that?
Quickly, it looks like, I mean, you guys have already put your names down on several of the dates. Commissioner Elmsey indicated that he's not going to be able to make Saturday's event, but the two of you were still scheduled to be there, so that's totally fine. So we've got at least 3 of 5 covered. And I understand, Commissioner Wentworth, that you're not in the area on March 3rd.
Right.
So we'll continue to reach out to both Commissioners Miller and Tresson to see if they can attend. But even if for some reason they can't, then at least a staff person will be present for that. And the invitations will also go out to council.
It looks like I should be able to make the Butterfield on March 3rd, so I'll plan for that at this point. If we get an excess of coverage, then I can, yeah. Thanks.
Okay, I'm looking forward to it on Saturday, so we'll get started. Item number 3, Harwood update.
Hey, so I had a request for some Harwood updates, and just as a reminder, the Harwood Institute for Public Innovation is an area of service that, or a process rather, that 4 staff at the library have been trained in, and we've been going out into the community to have conversations with people. Now, we do have Betty Lesher is one of those individuals that was trained in that. She'll be leaving in March. We had another staff person, Sarah Nolan, who was trained in that. She left in December, but thankfully, the state library has been given funding to train more people in this process. And we have 2 new library assistants that one has come on already, one is coming on in a week, and we're hoping to have them trained in May. So we will have 4 people again to continue this process. Basically, it's a process of turning outward to your community to seek their input in what are their aspirations, what would they like to see for their community, and how can we help put people together in partnerships to seek those aspirations and make concrete plans toward making those things happen. So what we did last year, February through October, is we met with groups that had adults and their families with special needs. And we ended up talking with several groups amounting to 48 individuals. And after those conversations, you take notes, you go through a series of 10 questions, and then based on those conversations, you look for themes. And so what did these conversations have in common? What kept coming up over and over again? And you create a report that then when you have this report together, you report back to the people who participated in the conversations, and you also report to whoever you can get to listen, because you want to see who knows something, who also might have these same aspirations, who might have something that will help this group meet their goals and work together. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the city. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the library. It could be Joe somebody who knows Anna somebody, and they're going to start working together to help this group come up with an idea. So what this group's particular aspirations turned out to be is they want local activities and resources for their families and for their family members with special needs. A lot of them age out of any assistance and programming that's available through the school systems, and then they're left with nothing to do. One of the quotes was, "Everyone likes to feel needed. If there's a job for someone, it makes them feel involved." Another desire heard at every meeting was to have one central source of information. One of the quotes from one of the participants said, "New parents to children with disabilities may feel overwhelmed and unsure of where to go or where to turn to." So a lot of times they just find out by happenstance, and they're searching and searching. And even within these conversations, what was so interesting to me is that they would learn from each other in these conversations about resources that were available. So even during the course of this, they would learn from each other. There was also another priority was inclusivity in the greater community. They wanted an opportunity to socialize more with each other and with neurotypical general public. So another was to have a safe and secure city. That comes across all groups, whether they're special needs or not. That comes up consistently. So among these also were wanting better transportation options. A lot of times the families get burned out from being the sole source of transportation for their families, and they may live in remote areas, they may not live near a bus stop, they may not be in a position where their child can transport on their own, and the parent really needs respite once in a while. So we asked them what actions would make a difference. How would they know change is taking place? They said they would want to hold leaders accountable for improvements, follow up with the families in these conversations, which we're planning on doing now that we're getting this information together, get the word out about activities, create a link perhaps on a library page, and notify the various groups that they can submit and check the site periodically to see updates on it. Offer opportunities for connections between support groups, create and identify partnerships for developing programs, promote opportunities for independence, which also allows respite for caregivers. And one of the questions we ask these groups, as every group gets asked the same 10 questions, who would they trust in their community? And they said other parents and caregivers, library and recreation staff, organizations such as United Cerebral Palsy and other advocates, educators in the school district, properly vetted volunteers, their peers, and people with sensitivity from businesses and Norco College, for example. So you get this really great collection of information that then we have and we can share, and now it's in our heads, and as we can talk to people, and then now that we've shared it even with you all and maybe anyone who's watching, maybe they'll reach out and want to start to put something together that might help this group reach their aspirations. So we have this isn't a little bit of a draft form yet, but we will pull this group together and invite them to hear what other groups shared with us, and then, like I said, report that to others. Now, what we're doing as we move forward is we've been scheduling other conversations with just the general community. We haven't had a lot of luck in getting people to come to those, but what we have done is people we've talked to have invited us to their groups. And so we're also meeting with other Harwood libraries to get their ideas on how they're getting people together. And it really takes a personal invite, because if it's kind of a hard thing to describe to people what it is until you're just standing there face to face talking with them. So we're really hoping to have some more success in the face-to-face invite to those. So that's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Well, thank you. I think this is a great idea. You sat down with me and explained this. I appreciate the update. I think of this as really like an incubator for community engagement. This is where we don't meet our neighbors anymore, and we are looking for people that we have something in common with. For people caring for seniors, if they need a support group, most of those are in Riverside, and there's very little respite care for people doing caregiving for seniors. And adults and children with disabilities is kind of that same deal, where it's helpful to talk to other caregivers and other people in the same circumstance so that you can share ideas and be together and you have that community. So I see what you're doing more as an incubator for our community, and hopefully we can publicize that because I think that's very needed. So it's something that the leadership here could definitely grow from. That I see our city kind of as like wide open. I mean, it's hard times, and these are hard times for the community. It's hard times to look at this budget and see community activities going down, and a few $1,000s here and there make such a big impact. But at the same time, what you're giving me is anything can happen, and it's kind of open for our community. It's wide open. So if we can put our minds together and we can put some effort together, we could really incubate some great things and move them out of just the talking phase and up to the next phase, which is these ideas appeal to leadership, and you can see where you can make the connections to make these things happen. So I really appreciate it. I hope you keep coming back with your updates.
Absolutely.
You know, I probably have a group for you to talk to.
Oh, good. Absolutely.
know,
Good. Please do.
so-
Please share the information, or I'll reach out to you either way. And we are willing to go anywhere.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.
Service organizations have been included in this?
What we did with this initial, anyone is, absolutely anyone, but this initial, when we reached out with conversations in January and February, what we did is we just posted flyers, we put it in the Corona Connection, just letting people know, come see us for these conversations. And so it's very open-ended. And what we're seeing as we're talking to other libraries who are conducting these is that they are having better luck when they are being a little more targeted with who they are talking to, like going to a senior center, going to someone's home who has, you know, it's usually best with a group of like 10 to 15 people. You really don't want it any bigger than that. And we've done with as few as 3. You know, you get 3 people together, okay, let's talk, you know. But when it's a little more targeted and you have the personal invite, it's working much better.
Thank you.
I'll just add, there's a meeting monthly, I'm sure we've talked about it before. Ms. Lana's attended many times over at the Chamber of Commerce on the first Monday of the month, typically, where nonprofit and service organizations are welcome to attend for an hour and just share information about what services are being provided. So that might be a place where when you have a special project, maybe you share there and you get some feedback from them on what services might be available.
What's the meeting?
It's called the Community Services Network, and it's at noon, first Monday at the Chamber of Commerce Conference Room.
Okay, thanks, Saul.
Well,
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to item number 6, Park Ambassador Program Update. I don't think we do say anything on the participation report, unless you have something to add. No? Okay. Yeah, so we reviewed the participation report with our, with the agenda, so we don't have, if you don't have anything to add this time, we'll move on to number 6, Park Ambassador Program Update, and that's going to fall on me. I know that Maintenance Services and Ed trained the commissioners. Were you able to make it, Saul? Okay, so I think you're the only one that hasn't gone yet, but I am confident that you will. I think you know what you're looking for anyway. I think you've got it. And I appreciate you going, Joe. So we've got the commissioners trained. So the commissioners, we have pamphlets, and if you're available to speak to sports leagues, any organizations that you might be at, we have the pamphlets available. You can promote the program, get the people there to put SeeClickFix on their phone and kind of educate them what to look for. I went to AYSO to the board meeting and kind of ran over the program briefly with them and hope to speak to more directly with the coaching staff and members, team management there. So kind of one-on-one more with the parents, because those really are the extra ears and eyes at the park that we need to be reporting problems. The other avenue that I was exploring is I had talked to the Corona Police Department and possibly presenting this at Neighborhood Watch meetings. So again, I don't have to be the even though I pursued that, I'm putting it out here for you guys too, to talk to people.
David, are we going to have See, Click, Fix brochures at the opening ceremonies? Can we have those?
We can do that.
At least we get them out there, okay?
And the Parks Ambassador brochures?
I don't know. The Park Ambassador brochures, Tom, I know that printing those up, I've been getting them from Ed, and that's quite kind of,
Yeah, if they've been approved and everybody's happy with how their current look is, then we can print up a few of them, obviously keeping in mind our printing costs associated with that. We don't have any problems. We did budget for some.
okay.
Maybe bring those with you, and I'll be talking to some parents at opening day and take a few with me to other meetings that I go to.
Yep. Okay. Awesome. Thank you. If there's anything else, I'll move on to number 7, Corona Partners for Parks Foundation update. I can kind of blend this in to make it shorter when I go to the commissioners' reports. But part of our goals and objectives was to partner the Corona Partners for Parks a little bit closer with the commission. So we talked about Arbor Day. We're looking at doing a trail cleanup. And we're focusing on public service. So we're looking for public service ideas and possibly some kind of a project to help beautify or maintain or improve the parks, whether it's a park cleanup or whether we paint something. We don't have an idea of what yet, but that's another service project idea, kind of building on to David's Corona Beautiful 2.0, but centering that on a park. What can we do as a small group to improve and rehab a park? So that's what we're kicking around with that. Our meeting is tomorrow, and again, we'll talk about the dates for Arbor Day, and we'll bring that back. You have any questions?
As far as partnering on like park beautification or projects of that sort, you're working with like the Helping Hands folks who participate quite a bit, and the volunteer .org site. It's
We are looking for ideas for kind of public services type oriented ideas. That one of the ideas was park-centered and improving the parks. We don't have anything firm. We haven't done anything other than we need to meet with the staff, see what we could do, and kind of firm up a plan. So if you guys, in the next few months, if you come up with any ideas that you think would be good for, that the commission could generate, that the Corona Partners for Parks could help put into place, that's what I'm asking for. That's kind of what I'm updating for. So we have our board meeting tomorrow. The next item is number 8, discussion of ideas for future agenda items. And I wanted to put that on there for everyone on the commission to kind of put out your ideas of agenda items that you would like to see for the rest of the year. Commissioner Almasy and I met together separately, and we kind of brainstormed a little bit. We're going to meet with Daryl tomorrow, but we'll continue this process through the years. So, and I know that Chris isn't here and Brian isn't here, but I wanted to be able to show the commission is looking for some information and reports. This goes along with our goals and agenda and objectives. This, putting these things on our agenda was part of our effort to increase our knowledge of gathering data and information from the community and the staff. So if there's particular ideas that you have in mind, even if you can't think of them right now, you could shoot me an email, here's an idea, and I will include it tomorrow when I meet with the city manager. So if you have anything offhand, I was, Joe and I had talked about, again, getting into delivering information from the financial report to the commission, things that make sense. The Quinby fees, what are they, where do they go? The debt that we carry, the $14 million debt that we still carry over the parks, where that Quinby is going. Our capital improvement budget project and priority setting. Operational costs, we covered some of that tonight. We saw that with the budget, but this is an ongoing communication that we want to keep doing. We looked at revenue from programming, as David presented. That was something that we talked about. We wanted to get more information on. Future anticipated revenue sources, future anticipated diff fees, anything that was coming into the pipe that we could be looking at. We were talking about some programming and possibly keeping the trails updated. The idea of possibly creating a trails subcommittee under the Parks Commission. There are very active members in the community who are very interested with the Trails Master Plan process. And I know that a lot of people do approach me on a regular basis about protecting our trailheads and the development. It's kind of a political hot button issue. And it would be great to have a place where educated people that are into this know what's going on and have a way to put input together that's organized and can be given to the city in such a way that it's digestible, manageable, and that we're having a good process go through as we keep talking about our trails and our trails master plan. So that was another item we were going to put up there for him. Does that meet are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm good with that. I think there's a couple things that, we should be getting a regular update on the Santa Ana River Trail where we're missing a significant connection, and there's some delays in that process that was hoped for in the last few years. The end date keeps getting pushed back, and that's not under our control, but updates would be helpful. So that should be a regular item, whether it's quarterly or not. And as far as trails, since we do have an active community who is using the trails right now, we could probably get a volunteer or two who would maybe come to our meeting, even in public comments for now, and bring us concerns, updates, know that we're looking to them to bring this, and we can make it a regular agenda item, or we can encourage them to speak at that time either way, because there's probably something to bring to our attention at any given time. While not every popular trail that the community uses is in the city limits, we could still get updates from users if we encourage them to come and bring that information forth.
Okay, thank you. All right, and do you have anything to add, or we'll just move right along then? All right. The next item is oral communications from the public, and I don't see any public here, but if we did, we would be happy to take some oral communications and input on what we've been discussing tonight, and hopefully in the future, when it's not Valentine's Day, we'll have some public attending. Commission members' reports and comments. Commissioner Shapiro, would you like to start?
Sure. I will expand on my sadness that Ms. Lana is leaving the city, and congratulate you for being able to move in a direction career-wise that will benefit you, and hope you'll remember us when you're up there in management further. Thank you for your reports, for both you and our librarian. Very helpful to know what's happening there. Thank you, Mr. Moody, for your reports, Ed, and the arborist. Appreciate that information very much. And thank you, Mr. Montgomery Scott, for your explanation on where you were going budget-wise. I know not all of it falls under our purview, but it's helpful to understand that since it's one budget in your department, that we kind of need to know where all that's moving. So thank you for all that. And happy Valentine's Day to everyone.
Commissioner Almacy?
I'm going to reiterate again to Lana, congratulations. Your passion was evident in every dealings I've had with you. Your passion was there, and I know you're going to take that with you to your next employment opportunity. Congratulations. In these trying times, what I've noticed is you judge leadership and you judge good ability not by the good times, but by the adverse times. And what I've seen over the last several months is the leadership that you provided, David and Tom, has been just outstanding. It's been upbeat. You're looking at things in a positive vein instead of a negative vein, and I applaud you for that. I know that we have a number of openings for the little leagues and things like that, and I look forward to doing that. And I know that it's going to be a very, very busy time as we transition into the spring. And I applaud all of you tonight, all of your reports. They were very, very thorough, and I applaud that. Thank you very much.
Okay. For my report, I just want to go over quickly the goals and objectives. I have a overhead that Christy's going to put up. Okay, there we go. So tonight we covered a lot of things, and tonight I just wanted to hit where we were making progress on our goals and objectives that the commission was talking about. So improving communication with city council. Saul and I continue to update on a monthly basis the city council at the city council meeting. I will be there at the next meeting for this to update them, and Commissioner Almacy as well can include time in those updates, and if he wants to do them. Any of the commissioners are open to do that. Our second item was improve communications with the community. And one of our objectives was to attend the quarterly Corona Youth Sports Association meeting. I attended that at the last quarter, and hopefully at the next upcoming quarter, some of the other commissioners will be able to attend that meeting. Present Park Ambassador Program to the community organizations. Again, part of communicating, I was able to present that to the AYSO, and then tonight share with you some additional progress that we could be making for getting the word out as staffing levels decrease, as budget decreases. Again, it's being able to get the items that need corrected to the maintenance service department faster. They will be corrected. It's just extra set of eyes and ears on the ground that help report those problems in our parks. So that's really what we're going for. And the last item is work with the Corona Parks Foundation to build a partnership, and that's what we talked a lot about tonight. Arbor Day, a park beautification project of some kind is on the table, and a trail cleanup in the spring. So I can bring you more information on all of those things, but I wanted to just put that out there that these were some of the ideas that the foundation was talking about, so I can bridge the communication gap between the commission and the foundation at our meeting. And with that, I want to conclude by saying that I'm going to miss you very much, Lana. And I know that I'm challenging, and thank you so much for working with me. You are an excellent person to work with, and I love your work ethic. You are a hard worker, and I love it when I see, because I'm this kind of person, it doesn't matter what the job is, if it needs done, I'll do it. And, you know, picking out trash cans, cleaning things, moving things around, you're right there doing everything you need to do. So, and above and beyond. So I'm really going to miss you, and so diplomatic in all of it, always. So it's wonderful. The city that you're going to, I'll just share with you, that's one of my little things I'll do is I'll look up other cities' websites to see what their websites look like, what are they doing, what's interesting, what can be borrowed. Because why reinvent the wheel, when you can just kind of adapt ideas that other people have put out there. And where you're going is one of those cities, it's one of my targets. It's a great place. So I wish you all the luck in the world, and I know that you will succeed and you will like it there. So although you're going to be missed, I know it's going to be a good experience. So with that, I just want to say thank you for the reports. I know that it was difficult with the budget, and that was much detail, but I appreciate that. And same, getting back to us with the information on the trees and the canopy, everything from Tom's department. So with that, I just want to wish everyone a happy Valentine's Day, and we will call this meeting to the end. Well, we have announcements? All right, we have announcements. There's a backside to this paper. I was ready to go home. This is Lana's last time. Okay, Lana.
They talk faster in Elk Grove, so we're going to have you practice.
I might be managing goats for part of it, so it
your
will
best.
be okay.
Nah.
I do want to thank the commission for your support and for your guidance over the years. I am a much better person for my time in the Circle City, and I will always hold a very fond place in my heart for Corona and the people that I've met in it, and I've been fortunate to be part of this organization. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity and for my relationships with each of you. I did want to let you know that the next YSAC meeting is on Thursday, March 15th at 6 p.m. We have invited the Corona PD Hope team to talk about some of the homeless issues that the leagues are seeing at the park, so they will be a part of that meeting, and just talking about general maintenance issues as well as field allocation processes. So that is March 15th, 6 p.m. at the Circle City Center, and I will leave the rest of the announcements to be read because we're the library. Thank you.
I was going to make her read them because it was her last meeting. We have Ladders and Linguini fundraiser coming up next Thursday. That'll be at 6 p.m. at the library.
I'll be there.
What's that? Oh, good. I will be too. And what else is there? Oh, our concert series starts in March. The Friends of the Library are sponsoring that. I was going to give you the list of performers, but they were not finalized. Although last night, Danny requested a little extra funding to cover the cost of the performers from the Friends, and they approved it. And it was a really great list. So I look forward to sharing that with you next time. A little suspense. Ooh.
Okay, is that it? All right, thank you. And with that, I guess we will call this meeting adjourned. See you next month.